Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome in. It's Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast, joined by the Senator Phil Perry. Big day on Tuesday at the NFL owners' meetings here in Palm Beach at the Breakers. Robert Kraft spent some time with a kind of an on-background conversation with the local media, and then he went on the record, and he was outstanding for about the 10 minutes that he spoke, Phil.
He was, and I would say the thing that stood out to me first, Tom, was the fact that Robert Kraft has high expectations for this year's team. It's something that we've been kicking around now for the last few weeks as the rest of the AFC has built, and the Patriots have just sort of maintained in some spots and subtracted in others. But he still believes that this is a team that should contend this year, which surprised me that he was so strong on that.
And it was a very well-phrased question, and I thought it was interesting. You're going to hear it in just a minute because Phil asks the second question after Robert's opening statement, but it's something you and I continue to talk about as well. Okay, what do we mean by contending? Do we mean contending for a playoff spot or contending to be what I would say one of the final 4 to 6 teams who have a shot at winning the Super Bowl? If we hit him with the truth serum, I don't know if he'd agree with that. I don't know if he'd say that they're contending at that level. But we're not hitting him with the truth serum right now. We're going to give you some unvarnished Robert Kraft. What stands out to me is how strongly, right at the outset, he aligns himself with the fans. This, to me, was about a couple of different things. One, to remind folks that it's his team, that he doesn't have Bill Belichick on notice, but he has noticed, and he wants to see continued success in the drafts, which he gets to right away. But there is no or else to what he's saying, but you can tell the expectations are high.
Yeah, I don't think there's any or else. I agree with you there. I can't see them, even if they have a losing record this year, going to Bill Belichick and saying, well, Bill,
didn't work.
It's been fun. We've got to move on. Welcome, Coach X. I don't know, Gerard Mayo.
Right.
I just can't see that. But it's clear to me that pressure's on in some ways. Tom, it reminds me a little bit of when we heard from Robert Kraft last year around this time. And it was a telephone conversation. It wasn't in person. But he clearly laid out how disappointed he was and how the Patriots had drafted in recent years. And oh, wouldn't you know, the Patriots then go on to have a really good draft. And I think Robert Kraft did feel, not that he had picked the players, but I think he felt some responsibility to put the screws to the front office in some ways.
Yeah, turn up the heat.
Rattle the cages.
And I think it's also interesting, too, he alluded to something he alluded to last year, and you'll hear it coming up right now, talking about the spending and free agency, and you're not going to buy a team. And the Patriots did that, and he talks about some of the guys who are rising up. So here's Robert Kraft. We're going to let it roll, and we'll catch you on the other side and talk Jabrill Peppers.
I'll just say I'm a Patriot fan big time, first. And more than anything, it bothers me that we haven't been able to win a playoff game in the last 3 years. And I'm happy that I think we had a great draft last year, and it made up for what happened the previous 4 years or so. And I look forward to hopefully having a great draft this year. That's the only way you can build your team for long-term and consistently, that you have a chance of winning, is having a good draft.
Robert, when it comes to the draft, it can be a little bit slower build. We've seen a lot of teams use free agency to try to get a lot better, a lot faster. You guys used free agency last year, and you improved by 3 wins. Are you comfortable if it is a slower build towards getting back to where you guys want to be?
Well, if what is a slower build?
If it takes a few years for the team to be, in true contention, or do you expect that to happen as soon as this year?
I expect it to happen as soon as this year. I think we've made the commitments as an organization, and I think we have a lot of talent and, some wonderful young men from last year and a couple in the weeds from before, and it's a chance for them to grow and hopefully come together, and the team comes together. I think, this on these young quarterbacks, the good ones in the second year have usually grown a great deal, and I think I'm a big fan of Mac Jones. I think, see how hard he works, and he wants everything to go right, and he puts the time and energy, and his personality is a team guy. So we have a chance, because without a good coach and a good quarterback, no matter how good the other players are, I don't think you can win consistently. And hopefully, I believe we have both, outstanding coach and a good young prospect at quarterback.
After last year, when the team spent a lot of money in free agency, this year it's been a quieter offseason in terms of that. How would you describe the team's plan and approach this year to get better?
Well, I think we have a lot of young players that are coming into their own. I don't think free agency is over. I know the big spending, you remember we have a salary cap, so there's only so much we can do in that area. I do think that we have an opportunity to pick people up right along the way, right down to the final cuts. That's, to me, when free agency is over, and I've seen it other years, and people get all excited with the headlines now, but in the end, it's what happens throughout the entire year.
So there's not very concerned that the Dolphins are getting Tyreek Hill and the Bills are getting Von Miller, and you guys are maybe subtracting a little bit of talent right now?
I don't look at it as subtracting. Those are good for the headlines, but the headlines aren't the substance of what's happening. And, in the end, I go back to 2001. We definitely didn't have the best headlines, the best talent, but we had the best team. And they came together, and that taught me a lot, that the chemistry of what goes on, no matter, and the intellect of the people you come in and who have to understand your system. Just because a guy has a record over here and then goes to another place doesn't ensure success.
Sure.
But we'll see.
Does it energize you when you see other AFC teams rise to the top? Does that frustrate you after you were dominant for so many years, or does it spur you?
No, I mean, I think what's gone on in the AFC, look, it looks like, I don't know what proportion, but number of quarterbacks, top quarterbacks in the league, it looks like there's a higher number in the AFC. But we really have to worry about our situation, take care of our business. And I can only worry, I'm fortunate. We have a paper and packaging company that's all over the world, over 120 countries. And actually it's 50 years old this year, so I'm pretty proud of that. But I learned running that company, I could only concern myself with what I can control. I can't worry about my competition. Yeah, secretly, we'd like them maybe to stumble, but I got to focus on our business and make sure we're doing the right thing. And then if you do that, good things happen. I mean, I think we had a period of 2 decades that were unbelievable with a salary cap, and we have to find a way to sustain it and keep it going. Said to you, after my family, there's nothing more important to me than the New England Patriots and winning football games. That's my passion. So whatever I can do, hopefully in a small way, to make that happen, I'm there. I'm not happy that we haven't won a playoff game in 3 years. So I think about that a lot.
There aren't many teams in recent history that have gone into a season without an offensive or defensive coordinator. So what's your confidence level in the assistant coaches on the staff right now?
So you're telling me I don't. I think we have it. I think Bill has a unique way of doing things. It's worked out pretty well up to now. So I know what I don't know, and I try to stay out of the way of things I don't know. I think he's pretty good. I don't know, is it over 40 years of experience doing it? So it doesn't sometimes look straight line to our fans or to myself, but I'm results oriented.
So confidence in him hasn't wavered either?
When it comes to Mac Jones, what are some of the qualities you like about him away from football?
Well, first of all, I'm amazed. He's such a good person and humble, but I come in there sometimes on the weekend or early. He's there working out, watching film, just doing things that I wouldn't believe someone of his background would have that kind of commitment given his past. And the guys in the locker room really like him, all the guys. You know, he's just, and you know, I actually believe he has a little more edge than we've seen, but he's been respectful of coming in as a rookie. So I'm very high on him, and I think we really, the staff did a great job drafting him, and we're lucky to have him for our future. And this will be a good year.
All right, so there you have it. Let's revisit a few of the comments. The first, right out of the chutes, I'm a Patriots fan, big time, first. And more than anything, it bothers me that we haven't been able to win a playoff game in the last 3 years. That, to me, was an immediate alignment with the fans. I'm not the owner. I'm not some executive. I'm still the guy in section 213, 216, whatever it was. And I have an expectation that the fans, like myself, will be provided with the comfort of winning to which we've become accustomed. Did you find that interesting, how quickly he aligned himself with the fandom?
Yeah, I think he's always conscious of that, right? Whether it's this conversation or whether it's conversations about Tom Brady and how much love he had for Tom Brady, and you know, it was more than even just a fan's love for a player. It was a familial kind of love that he had for Tom Brady. But I felt in some ways he wanted people to know that because he wants the fans to understand his point of view and where he's coming from, and the fact that he is one of them. He just happens to also own the team.
Being one of them, and when we talk in absolutes, okay, how would the fans feel? And if I did a poll today for Quick Slants, which you guys will enjoy tonight at 6 o'clock, asking how do people feel after hearing Bill Belichick and Robert Kraft talk? Did they feel better? Did they remain unchanged and still very bullish on the Patriots? Did they feel a little bit worse? Did they remain the same and still feel pessimistic? More than 50% said they still remain the same and feel pessimistic. Another 18% said they feel worse. So 7 out of 10 are on the negative side. That's a Twitter poll. So you don't get a lot of cheery folks there.
Twitter's not a happy
But I
place?
love you. I'm there. I'm not a happy guy. But when we look at that, so we can presume that Robert Kraft is going to generally align with the fans in, even if he understands why things are a certain way, his mood about things will be a certain way. So he's not that satisfied with things. If the Patriots don't see the progress that Robert is hoping to see with Mac Jones, or the progress with some of the guys that he alluded to who are in the weeds, wouldn't he more align with the fans in saying something's got to give? Because there will be a time when there's a segment, and there is a smaller segment of batshit crazy fans who are like, got to get rid of Bill, it's over. I don't think that's the case, but that group will grow if this is not a great season.
It will, and if it's not a great season, then maybe you become just one season closer to potentially ending that relationship, but that I feel like is getting ahead of ourselves. I don't think Robert Kraft with Bill Belichick is ever going to do what Bill Belichick does with players, which is part ways a year too early rather than a year too late. I think Robert Kraft's hand would really have to be forced, and a 6-11 season in 2022, while incredibly disappointing and something that I think Robert Kraft would deem unacceptable, would not force his hand to let go of the greatest coach of all time.
But there are landmines in this season which could change things radically. And to me, the most significant landmine is the coaching staff. And if the Patriots appear to be overmatched, last year we saw substitution problems. We saw execution problems. We saw penalties in a way that we hadn't seen. If that continues this year, and it's coupled with a rudderlessness on offense when the Patriots didn't really make any outside hires and have had an offensive line coach, a running backs coach, and an offensive coordinator and a quarterbacks coach scoot, then that's a landmine that Robert would be stepping on. He's juggling dynamite if this thing doesn't work with Patricia and Joe Judge.
How does it look? I guess that's what I come back to.
Yes.
How bad is it? I mean, if we're talking about worst case scenarios, then everything should be on the table,
Yeah,
right?
Mac Jones gets hurt and Brian Hoyer has to play, or Brian Lewerke's out there.
I think even that would don't you think that
That
would
would-
even buy the coaching
Oh
staff
yeah,
another
it would.
year?
It
Right,
would.
Right.
That's the caveat to it.
Okay.
But if the offense looks like ass, and Mac goes from, what was it, 23 and 12 touchdowns and 3,800 yards, 68% completion rate, and all of that craters, then you're looking at, okay, it's not that Bill can't coach, it's not that Bill isn't smart, it's just that everybody could see there weren't enough coaches here, and we've seen a regression.
Do you think Bill Belichick would ever let it get to that point? Don't you think he would just take over everything at some point and just say, we can't have it if it's as rudderless as you're describing?
Well, wouldn't you have thought
And then
that?
he becomes offensive coordinator and play caller and whatever else, quarterbacks coach.
But the last 3 years, we wouldn't have imagined last year when they were 9-4 that they were going to finish 1-4 in the last 5 games, and the only win being over the hapless Jaguars, who were already in the golf course.
But I wouldn't ascribe that all to coaching either. Like, I think Mac Jones didn't play as well as he was capable of, not
Right.
even close, the last month or so of the season. And we talked about, has he hit a wall?
Mm-hmm.
Is he being sped up? Is there something going on? So
But
you're
when-
right, but if it looks like that over the duration of the season, and it's not just a young quarterback having a hard time as a professional, and it extends into the Patriots are only calling 6 plays on offense because they don't know what else to do. Like that's a problem. I just can't see it getting to that point.
But it's funny because it was kind of there at junctures last year, especially at the end of the year. You saw burnt timeouts, you saw befuddlement, you saw Trent Brown taking a personal foul, and then later in the game, David Andrews taking a personal foul in a critical game against the Buffalo Bills. You saw them unable to stop teams. You saw some of their best players fail to make plays when they were sitting right in front of them, or their former best players. So that's why I say, look, yeah, does Bill know what he's doing? Yes, he does. Well, if Bill, and we presume that to be the case, but in the past, we presumed that he knew what he was doing when he was going into the season with Jarrett Stidham and Brian Hoyer as his quarterback depth chart. Cam Newton wasn't still supposed to be there at the end of June, and if he wasn't, what would the Patriots have done? He actually was a godsend. That could have been an even worse team. What would the plan have been if Mac Jones wasn't at 15? Who would have been quarterback? The plan then was Cam Newton. So there's serendipity. What's my point? I don't know. Let's hear what you got to say.
I do look at this, and after talking to people here this week about Joe Judge and Matt Patricia, there is still some confusion, which is completely understandable from people across the NFL as to how they're going to try to figure this thing out.
Yep.
There are people who look at Joe Judge and they say, if that's the quarterback's coach, he's got a lot to learn because that's not been his expertise
Right.
at this level. And is that the best? The questions we're asking are questions that teams that will be playing the Patriots this season are asking as well.
I have yet to encounter somebody who categorically says those are good moves and you're going to be surprised at how effectively Joe Judge and Matt Patricia operate with the offense. I have almost unanimously, however, found people who say, well, Bill knows what he's doing. And that is buying on the credit built up. God bless him. And he has. But it's also interesting when you think about where the Patriots are and buying on credit and what Bill has accomplished, which is beyond significant. But in 2019, Birdie! When the Patriots lost their playoff game against Tennessee Titans, and there was a question posed by a reporter that said, Bill, what do you have to say to the fans who've been there through thick and thin? And Bill said, I just don't think we've had an awful lot of thin around here, and I don't think the fans feel that way either. I think that Robert Kraft would fit into, even if he shouldn't, after 20 years of great comfort and joy, he thinks it's kind of thin. Compared to the rest of the league, it ain't. Compared to around here, it's been thin.
Right. You hear that comment from Robert Kraft if you are somebody who's representing the Jets or the Bills even, or...
the Commanders.
Right. 3 years, no playoff win? 3 years? Oh.
Not even no
sorry.
playoff appearance. It's no playoff wins.
Yeah, right. Playoff wins. Right. They made it last year. So I just find that interesting that the pressure is on to a degree. Again, I don't think Bill Belichick's getting fired, but the pressure's on Bill Belichick. The pressure's on Mac Jones. And I don't know, Robert Kraft, one of the other things he just referenced in that conversation was the leap that quarterbacks, the good ones, take in year two. And I think he's right, and there probably is plenty of statistical analysis that would back that up. But I think the even more significant analysis is the quarterbacks who make that leap that he's talking about also happen to be surrounded by really, really strong offensive talent. There's not an elite quarterback in the league that doesn't have an elite group of weapons to play with. And Mac Jones clearly does not have that yet with this group. There's still time to add pieces. There's still the draft. And so there is still room for Mac Jones to make that leap. I'm just not sure the leap is going to be quite as significant as Robert Kraft is maybe expecting if they don't surround him.
Right. And I guess, too, articulating the expectation I believe will be in contention, whether it was off the cuff or designed, that tells us what his expectation is. It's not his hope, it's his expectation. That's what we are. That's when I sit my ass down up on that very tall seat in my suite at my stadium and look at my football team. I want to see them with more points at the end of the game than the other team a lot. And I just don't think at this juncture, don't play games for a while, but at this juncture, you can't really guarantee that. Jabrill Peppers, meanwhile, let's switch gears, and I think we can put a cork in Robert, so to speak.
Right.
But Jabrill Peppers has signed. The versatile safety who missed the season because of an ACL. What do you got?
The Patriots got some flexibility with this trade. That's the word that I hear consistently in talking to folks who have watched Jabrill Peppers closely and who have an understanding of what the Patriots do defensively. Flexibility, because now you can use Jabrill Peppers, who is a versatile safety. Typically, he's more of a box safety than he's a deep safety. He's not going to be replacing Devin McCourty anytime soon. But you have Peppers now, you have Adrian Phillips now, and you have Kyle Duggar now. And you could use all three simultaneously if you wanted to. And those three players could be somewhat interchangeable. And so it gives you that flexibility to, if you have a running back, a tight end, and say, Tom, a big slot receiver. Not a Jonathan Jones slot receiver, but a bigger slot, which is becoming the trend in today's NFL. Now you have three players that you would feel comfortable matching up with any of those three, no matter how they're deployed into their route. So even if you feel as though, okay, Duggar, in a perfect world, we want you on the tight end.
Yep.
If it's the slot who comes his way and he has to run with that guy, he's able to do it. And Phillips can run with the tight end, or Peppers can run with the back. So I think this is something that Bill Belichick covets. The more you can do, right? It's a prototypical Patriot signing in that way, and we also shouldn't leave out he returns punts. And I think he probably will replace Gunnar Olszewski as their primary punt returner.
Good deal. Also, there was a rules change today instituted for the playoffs only. Overtime will now consist of a guaranteed possession for both teams. I'm down with that. I don't care about the regular season. It's really funny because the postseason record for the team receiving the ball first is 10-2, winning on that first possession.
Well, no. So it's 7 wins on the first possession, but 10-2 overall.
10-2. Okay, 7 wins on the first possession. 7
Still
in a row
significant
as well.
That I don't know.
Might be 7 in a row. Be that as it may. During the regular season, it's much more balanced. I take that as there's a couple of reasons for the postseason. Teams that are in the playoffs have better offenses. By the end of the year, offenses are generally overwhelming defenses because of injuries, attrition, figuring things out, and especially at the end of a hard-fought playoff game, defenses are gassed. Whether it be the Kansas City Chiefs with the Patriots in overtime, whether it be the Atlanta Falcons trying to deal with the Patriots in overtime, they had no shot. Buffalo's somewhat the same thing this year with Kansas City, who just tracked their asses down. So I don't look at there being a real comparison, and if the NFL's truly prioritizing health and safety, I'm fine with them playing 4 quarters during the regular season. and just one possession, and can end it in the regular season.
Yeah, I like it too. To me, it does come back to, in the postseason, that's when the best quarterbacks play.
Yes.
And if you give one of the best quarterbacks in the league one possession with a chance to win it, and they're allowed to be really aggressive, and the play caller is allowed to be, is forced in a way to be really aggressive, that makes the most sense to me. It's interesting. It felt like, according to our buddy Albert Breer from Sports Illustrated, there was some momentum for a plan that I thought sounded great, which was just a continuation into essentially a fifth quarter that was still sudden death. So if you finished the fourth quarter at the 50-yard line and you had possession, Tom, you would start then the quote-unquote fifth quarter at the 50-yard line, and you would then play it out with the same sudden death rules that the league has had for a long time. And the reason I like that is because you get rid of the coin flip.
Yep.
It makes the end of the fourth quarter meaningful, and it rewards teams that have possession, for having possession in the first place. It's not luck of the draw. Again, the biggest thing to me is the coin toss. If you could get it out of there, tremendous. This new rule helps with that, Tom, but it also opens up the door for lengthy overtimes, doesn't it? You could go back and forth for a while if nobody is scoring.
You could, and that's why I don't hate the notion of forcing a team to go for two, or even the punt 4th and 13 rule. But we're going to save that for next year's rules changes. We've had a very busy week. I hope you enjoyed it. Phil will have his next Pats, as always. We'll probably circle back with you later in the week. We will. That's part of the routine. But we're going to put a lid on this, Cork and Robert, and a lid on this, and we will see you later on tonight on Quick Slants, early edition, Boston Sports Tonight. We love you very much. Phil, don't we love him?
Love you lots.